Okay, so to continue on with our reading from Introduction, the Transformation of Desire to Tantra, we are on chapter 8, which is Clear Spaciousness of Mind, Making Space Through Not Seeing. As we have discussed, renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness are three of the prerequisites for the practice of Tantra. This does not mean, however, that our realization of these three has to be complete and perfect before we can start following the Tantric path. An approximate understanding is sufficient for us to begin. Take the realization of emptiness, for example. To gain a perfect understanding of the ultimate nature of all phenomena is a profound accomplishment. If we were to wait until then before we could practice Tantra, when would we ever begin? Perhaps never. Fortunately, this is not a problem. In order to train in the various transformations of Tantra, it is enough for us to be able to relax our ordinary sense of ego identification somewhat. We do not need a perfect realization of our lack of self-existence, but we do need to be able to give ourselves some space from our ordinary compulsive role-playing. Tibetan lamas often say, not seeing is the perfect seeing. Strange words, perhaps, but they have a profound meaning. They describe the advanced meditator's experience of spacious, universal reality, the experience beyond dualism. In our ordinary experience, we are overwhelmed by countless dualistic perceptions and conceptions. Every day, we are attracted to pleasurable objects and repulsed by unpleasant ones. Burdened with a narrow idea of who we are, we spend our time running toward this and away from that. As we have already seen, this deeply ingrained habit of viewing things dualistically and believing in our dualistic dimensions leads to nothing but confusion and repeated dissatisfaction. But it is possible to cultivate a completely different view of reality. Fed up with the endless rat race of our compulsive, cyclical existence, we can train in penetrative awareness and cultivate a direct perception of the actual way things exist. This training proceeds in different stages, some of them highly analytical and conceptual, and others more direct and experiential. Eventually, as we become more and more deeply absorbed in the experience of spaciousness, the ordinary, concrete appearances normally crowding our vision begin to dissolve. Like summer clouds appearing back into the clear blue expanse of the sky, our dualistic visions cease and we are left with nothing but the clear, empty space of non-duality. In this space, empty of all concrete concrete discriminations of this and that, our mind feels calm and boundless, free of limitation. No longer occupied with seeing and believing in the ultimate reality of ordinary appearances, we enter into the perfect seeing of the non-duality experience. Far from being in a state of sleep-like blank-mindedness, our mind as at such a time is awake and alert, rejecting nothing, asserting nothing, yet accepting everything. Instead of feeling trapped and limited, forced to play the same pointless ego games over and over again, we begin to taste the true liberation of unencumbered consciousness. This liberation is possible because this superficial, conventional, fantasy, dualistic mind is not the fundamental nature of human beings. Our fundamental nature is as clean and clear as crystal, and there is no place for the self-pitying imagination. It automatically dissolves, and with it dissolves our imprisoning limitations. If we can enter and then remain within the naturally clear state of our own mind, we will have the time and space to see things without confusion. We will even be able to handle the business of everyday life more skillfully. Some people wonder about this. If I allow my mind to return to its natural, uncomplicated state, how will I be able to function in this complicated world? How can I get from one place to another? How can I hold down a job? How can I cook a meal? How can I do anything? But there is no reason to carry on this type of argument with yourself. The fact is that when you are in a clean and clear state of mind, you will be free to pay full attention to what you are doing, and you will therefore naturally do it well. Problems come when we are not living in a natural state of mind. Then, no matter what you are doing, your mind will be on something else. You are supposed to be cleaning your house, but your mind is thinking about going to the beach and eating ice cream. That is when you run into difficulties. Clarity and non-duality. By contemplating our stream of consciousness in meditation, we can be led naturally to this spacious experience of non-duality. As we observe our thoughts carefully, we will notice that they arise, abide, and disappear themselves. There is no need to expel thoughts from our mind forcefully. Just as each thought arises from the clear nature of our mind, so too does it naturally dissolve back into this clear nature. When thoughts eventually dissolve in this way, we should keep our mind concentrated on the resulting clarity as undistractedly as we can. We should train ourselves not to become engrossed in any of the thoughts constantly arising in our mind. Our consciousness is like a vast ocean with plenty of space for thoughts and emotions to swim about in, and we should not allow our attention to be distracted by any of them. It does not matter if a certain fish is particularly beautiful or repulsive. Without being distracted one way or the other, we should remain focused on our mind's basic clarity. Even if a magnificent vision arises, the kind we have been waiting years to see, we should not engage in conversation. We should, of course, remain aware of what is going on. The point is not to become too dull-minded that we do not notice anything. However, while remaining aware of thoughts as they arise, we should not become entranced by any of them. Instead, we should remain mindful of the underlying clarity out of which these thoughts arose. Why is it so important to complete the clarity, or to contemplate the clarity of our consciousness in this way? Because as we have seen again and again, the source of our happiness and suffering, the root of both the pains of samsara and the bliss of nirvana, is the mind. And within the mind is our habitual wrong view, or our ignorant, insecure ego grasping that holds on to the hallucination of concrete self-existence as if it were reality. The way to break the spell of this hallucination is to see the illusory nature of things and recognize that all phenomena are nothing but fleeting appearances arising in the clear space of our mind. Thus, the more we contemplate the clarity of our own consciousness, the less we hold on to any appearance of being concrete and real, and the less we suffer. By watching our thoughts come and go in this way, we move even closer to the correct view of emptiness. Seemingly concrete appearances will arise, remain for a while, and then disappear back into the clear nature of our mind. As each thought disappears in this way, we should train ourselves to feel that this disappearance is even more real than the thought's original concrete appearance. The more we train in this type of not seeing, the more familiar we become with the clear spaciousness of our mind. Then, even when extremely destructive thoughts and emotions such as anger and jealousy arise, we will remain in contact with the underlying purity of our consciousness. This purity is always with us, and whatever delusions we may experience are only superficial obscurations that will eventually pass, leaving us with the essentially clear nature of our mind. When we contemplate our own consciousness with intense awareness, leaving aside all thoughts of good and bad, you are automatically led to the experience of non-duality. How is this possible? Think of it like this. The clean, clear blue sky is like consciousness, while the smoke and pollution pumped into the sky are like that unnatural artificial concepts manufactured by ego-grasping ignorance. Now, even though we say the pollutants are contaminating the atmosphere, the sky itself never really becomes contaminated by the pollution. The sky and the pollution each retain their own characteristic nature. In other words, on a fundamental level, the sky remains unaffected no matter how much toxic energy enters it. The proof of this is that when conditions change, the sky can become clear once again. So that when conditions change, the sky can become clear once again. In the same way, no matter how many problems may be created by artificial ego concepts, they never affect the clean, clear nature of our conscious itself. From the relative point of view, our consciousness remains pure because its clear nature never becomes mixed with the nature of confusion. From an ultimate point of view as well, our consciousness always remains clear and pure. The undual characteristic of the mind is never damaged by the dualistic concepts that arise in it. In this respect, consciousness is pure, always has been pure, and will always remain pure. In the nature of deluded minds such as jealousy and anger, is the nature of deluded minds such as jealousy and anger also clear, you may ask? Yes, all minds equally possess this clear, immaterial nature. Whether they are positive or negative, unmistaken or deluded, all minds clearly reflect their own appropriate objects. Just as a mirror has to be clear and uncovered for it to reflect the image of the face before it, whether the face is handsome or ugly, so too must be the mind be clear. If any state of mind were not clear, it would not reflect anything good or bad. We can compare positive states of mind to water at rest and deluded states of mind to turbulent boiling water. If we investigate the nature of the boiling water, we will discover that, despite the turbulence, each individual droplet is still clear. The same is true of the mind, whether it is calm or boiled into turbulence by the overwhelming complexities of dualistic views. Its basic nature remains clear and conscious. Hallelujah for that. The conclusion then is that we all have the capacity to move from the confused, polluted state of ego, conflict, to the natural, clean and clear state of pure consciousness itself. We should never think that our mind has somehow become irreversibly contaminated. This is impossible. If we can train ourselves to identify and enter into the natural, unaffected state of our consciousness, we will eventually experience the freedom of non-dual awareness. Manifestation of consciousness. From the Buddhist point of view, all of the circumstances of our life are manifested in our own consciousness. This is the central understanding of Buddhism. Painful and confusing situations derive from a painful and confused mind. And whatever happiness we experience, from ordinary pleasure to the highest realization of enlightenment, is also rooted in our own mind. If we look at our life, we can easily see how it is completely controlled by our mind, especially by our mind of desirous attachment. We are continuously thinking of going here and there, having this and that, and then acting on these desires in our pursuit of satisfaction. Not only does our restless mind continuously give birth to new thoughts and ideas, but we tend to follow them wherever they lead us. As a result, we are lured from one situation to another by the promise of happiness, yet in the end we experience nothing but fatigue and disappointment. The solution is not to suppress our thoughts and desires for this world, for this would be impossible. It would be like trying to keep a pot of water from boiling by pressing down tightly on the lid. The only sensible approach the only sensible approach is to train ourselves to observe our thoughts without following them. This deprives them of their compulsive energy and is therefore like removing the pot of boiling water from the fire. Eventually, calmness and clarity will prevail. We humans are very proud of our ability to think, yet much of our thinking often makes things incredibly complicated. Look at the way even the wrapping of a simple piece of chocolate is crammed full of information and advertising. We may feel that this ability to generate a great number of thoughts and ideas about a single object is a sign of our intelligence, but much of what we do with this intelligence is unnatural and totally unnecessary. Of course, our rational mind, the gross mind that is caught up in society's values, believes in the importance of everything we do. But we should not be fooled into believing that all this complicated thinking is the truth. There may be a lot of things we have to go along with in order to live our daily lives, but we don't have to believe in them. And when we are being complicated, we shouldn't even believe in ourselves. Oh my gosh, I so love that. Can I read those last? There may be a lot of things we have to go along with in order to live our lives, our daily lives, but we don't have to believe in them. And when we are being complicated, we shouldn't even believe in ourselves. I love that line. Does this mean then everything we do and think is false? No, there is some truth to what is going on. For example, even though the sky is fundamentally clear and pure, there is some truth to the pollution floating around in it. What I am saying is that we shouldn't believe that our thoughts about this and that are absolutely true. Air pollution may have some truth to it, but it is not concrete, self-existent, or ultimately real. Similarly, our thoughts may have a certain amount of truth to them, but it would be a mistake to believe in them ultimately. What we need to learn then is how to maintain clear awareness while cutting off our habitual reactions to things. Ordinarily, our immediate response when something happens, when, for instance, someone gives a piece of chocolate to our friend, is to react dualistically. Why did she give it to him? Why did she give it to him? Why didn't she give it to me? He is so lucky. I'm so unlucky. Our mind constantly churns out all kinds of dualistic garbage like this, and our life reflects the confusion. One result is that our relationships with people and things are fickle and unstable. First, we are interested in a new friend, the next day we discard them. One day we desire to own some beautiful new things, the next day we cannot even stand to look at it. This constant changing of our likes and dislikes is another sign that our ordinary concrete concepts of reality are mistaken and nothing but the projections of a confused and superstitious mind. There are times both in and out of meditation, however, when this dualistic confusion subsides and we experience the calm clarity of our pure awareness. The peace of mind we experience at such times is indescribable and far superior to the fleeting pleasures our senses normally hunger after. But it is not enough to have an experience of this inner peace merely once or twice. This will not lead to any lasting realizations. Instead, we need continuous training so that we can repeatedly cut through our confused dualistic concepts and abide undistractedly in the underlying clarity of our essential mind. If we rely on a valid, well-tested method, such as the practice of Tantra, eventually our awareness of the mind's functional clarity will become indestructible, and we will no longer be under the control of our dualistic superstitions. Okay, guys, well, here comes a helicopter. I'm going to read the second half of chapter 8 here in the next video. See you then.